In 1959, a young French cook named Jacques Pepin stood over a kettle of clam chowder big enough to bathe in. His job was to make 3,000 gallons taste the same in Maine as in Florida. That was the secret of Howard Johnson's. Not the orange roof, discipline. Today, people remember the roof and forget the food, and the food was extraordinary. Number 18 was so strange, kids would not call it dessert. Number 3 was perfected by a chef who later cooked for presidents. Hit subscribe. Let us count down the 25 forgotten Howard Johnson's menu items that vanished forever. Number 25, corn toasties. Before drive-thrus, before frozen breakfast sandwiches, Howard Johnson's served little griddle cakes that came off the supply truck by the case. Corn toasties, orange toasties, blueberry toasties. They arrived frozen, golden discs of cornmeal batter studded with sweet kernels, and the line cook dropped them on the flat top until the edges crisped and the centers turned tender and steaming. A pat of butter melted into the surface. A drizzle of syrup ran down the sides. For a family pulling off the highway at 7 in the morning, this was a hot breakfast in under 5 minutes, long before anyone called fast food fast. The corn toastie tasted like cornbread, and pancake had a child, sweet and savory at the same time. Kids who would not touch oatmeal ate 3 of them without complaint. When the frozen food line was discontinued, the toasties went with it. You cannot buy them anywhere now. A whole category of American roadside breakfast simply disappeared, and almost nobody remembers it existed. Number 24. The Shirley Temple and the Roy Rogers. This was the genius of Howard Johnson's. They understood that a kid who felt grown up would beg his parents to come back. So while mom and dad got coffee, the children got their own cocktail, minus the liquor. The Shirley Temple was ginger ale or lemon lime soda stained pink with a long pour of grenadine, finished with a fat maraschino cherry speared on a little plastic sword. The Roy Rogers was the same idea built on cola. The drink arrived in a real glass, sweating cold, and a child holding one felt exactly as important as the adults at the table. A nickel of syrup turned an ordinary soda into an event. Restaurants still make these on request, but almost no chain puts them on the menu by name anymore, with the little sword and the ceremony of it. Howard Johnson's understood that the ritual was the product. The drink was just the excuse. Number 23, Hawaiian baked ham. In the post-war years, anything with pineapple on it felt impossibly exotic, like a vacation you could eat. Howard Johnson's leaned all the way in. A thick slab of ham was scored in a diamond pattern, studded with whole cloves, brushed with a brown sugar glaze, and baked with a ring of pineapple and a maraschino cherry sitting dead center. It came out glistening, sweet and salty and slightly smoky. The glaze caramelized into a sticky crust along the edges. Served with a scoop of mashed potato and a bright pile of buttered vegetables, it looked like a magazine photograph. For families who could not afford to fly to Honolulu, this was the closest thing to a tropical dinner the highway could offer. A few of the very last orange roof holdouts kept Hawaiian baked ham on the menu right up until the end. But for almost everyone, that sweet glazed slab is a memory and nothing more. Number 22, the open tenderloin steak sandwich. Howard Johnson's was not just clams and ice cream, it fed working men too, and the open steak sandwich was built for them. A thin to tenderloin steak, charcoal broiled until the edges charred, was laid flat across a single slice of toast and drowned in a ladle of dark pan gravy. No top bun. You ate it with a knife and fork. The toast soaked up the gravy and the beef juices until it turned soft and rich at the bottom, and every cut of that steak carried the smoky flavor of the broiler. A cube steak version existed for tighter budgets, the cheaper cut tenderized and broiled the same way. This was the dinner a man ordered after a long drive, something hot and heavy that sat in your stomach and got you to the next town. The open-faced sandwich, gravy and all, has nearly vanished from American menus. We replaced it with handheld everything and forgot how good a fork and knife sandwich could be. Number 21, the frap. Order a milkshake at Howard Johnson's and you got a New England frap, and there is a difference, even if the rest of the country never learned it. A frappu was ice cream, milk, and flavored syrup whipped together at the fountain until it was so thick the straw stood straight up on its own. With 28 flavors of real butterfat ice cream to build from, the possibilities were endless. Coffee frappe, black raspberry frappe, peppermint stick frap in December. The soda jerk pulled the steel cup off the spinner, poured it tall, and set the rest of the canister beside your glass so you got every drop. A frappe cost $0.25 or so, and it was practically a meal. The chains that replaced Howard Johnson's sell thin, machine-pumped shakes made from powder and air. Nobody hands you the extra in the metal cup anymore. That little gesture, the second pour, was a small kindness that came standard under the orange roof. Number 20, chicken croquettes. This was thrift turned into elegance. Leftover cooked chicken was minced fine, bound with a thick cream sauce, chilled until firm, then shaped by hand into little cones or logs, rolled in crumbs and deep fried until the outside shattered like glass and the inside stayed creamy and hot. They arrived 2 or 3 to a plate under a blanket of pale gravy, with mashed potato and peas alongside. The croquette was a way to make a few cents of meat feel like a full Sunday dinner, and Howard Johnson's did it well enough to put it in the frozen food line so families could buy it for home. Croquettes used to appear in every diner and church supper in America. Now, they have all but disappeared from this country, kept alive mostly overseas. We decided they were too much fuss. We were wrong. The texture of a proper croquette, crisp shell, and molten center is something a chicken nugget will never touch. First pattern break. Here is what nobody tells you about Howard Johnson's. The food was almost beside the point. What Howard Deering Johnson actually invented was the idea that a restaurant in Maine and a restaurant in Florida could be the exact same restaurant. Before him, eating on the road was a gamble. You never knew if the food would be safe, let alone good. Johnson changed that. He built commissaries that shipped standardized ingredients to every location. He wrote recipes down to the gram. He trained his cooks like an army. When you saw that orange roof from a mile away, you were not just seeing a building, you were seeing a promise. The clams will taste the same as last time. The ice cream will be cold and real. Your kids will be safe and fed. That promise is why he became the father of the entire franchise industry. Every McDonald's, every Red Lobster, every chain you have ever trusted on a highway exit owes its DNA to a man who decided that consistency itself was worth selling. We take that for granted now. In 1935, it was a revolution. Number 19, liver and onions. This one separates the generations completely. Once upon a time, calf's liver was not a punishment. It was a treat people ordered on purpose, and Howard Johnson's kept it on the menu for decades because customers demanded it. Thin slices of liver were dredged in flour and quickly pan-fried, just 2 minutes aside, because a single minute too long turned it tough and bitter, which is exactly how a whole generation of kids learned to hate it at home. Done right at Hojo's, it was mild, rich, and tender, the outside browned and the inside still faintly pink. A heap of slow-cooked onions, sweet and golden and almost jammy, went over the top, and the whole plate sat in its own savory drippings. Liver is one of the most nutritious foods a person can eat, packed with iron and vitamin B12, and it cost the kitchen almost nothing. We stopped ordering it the moment we could afford to. The nutrition did not go anywhere. The appetite did. Number 18. Welsh rarebit. Say the words to anyone under 50 and you will get a blank stare. But Welsh rarebit was a Howard Johnson's institution, and it is one of the strangest, most comforting things ever served under that roof. It was essentially grilled cheese turned into a sauce. Sharp cheddar was melted down with a splash of beer and a shot of Worcestershire until it became a thick, glossy, savory pour, and it arrived ladled hot over toast, topped with 2 strips of crisp bacon and 2 slices of tomato. You ate it with a fork. The cheese soaked into the toast. The bean added smoke, the tomato cut the richness, and the whole thing was so satisfying it almost felt sinful. Kids ordered it to feel sophisticated. Adults ordered it because it tasted like a hug. It came pre-portioned in jars to the restaurants, heated to a boil, and served in minutes. Today, almost no American restaurant serves it. We traded 100 years of cheese-on-toast tradition for nachos and never looked back. Number 17. The hand-dipped chocolates. People forget that Howard Johnson's began as a soda fountain and candy counter, and even at the height of the empire, the front of many restaurants kept a glass case full of confections. Trays of chocolates, every one of them hand-dipped, sat gleaming under the lights. There were 3 kinds of gum. There were lollipops for the birthday club kids. On your way out, full of clams and ice cream, you could buy a little white box of chocolates to eat in the car, and a child pressing his nose against that glass case, trying to choose, is a memory thousands of Americans still carry. The candy counter was a relic of the drugstore era that birthed the whole company, and it gave the place a warmth that no modern fast food counter has ever matched. When the menus modernized and the chains took over, the candy cases were the first thing to go. They did not fit the new math. They were pure charm, and charm does not show up on a spreadsheet. Number 16. Indian pudding. Here is a dessert that predates the United States itself, and Howard Johnson's served it as a stock menu item from the earliest days. Indian pudding was cornmeal slowly cooked down with milk and a generous pour of molasses, sweetened dark and spiced with ginger and cinnamon, then baked low and slow for hours until it set into something between a custard and a porridge. It came out warm, deep brown, and impossibly cozy, and the kitchen served it the only correct way, with a scoop of vanilla ice cream melting into a creamy pool on top. The hot pudding against the cold ice cream was the entire point. This was a colonial New England recipe, the kind of thing the Pilgrims actually ate, kept alive on a highway menu into the modern age. Almost no restaurant in America makes Indian pudding anymore. It is too slow, too humble, too old-fashioned. But for the families who remember it, no modern dessert has ever come close to that first warm, molasses-dark spoonful. Number 15. Macaroni and cheese. Long before the blue box took over every pantry in America, Howard Johnson's macaroni and cheese was so good they froze it and sold it in grocery stores nationwide. This was not powder stirred into water. It was elbow macaroni folded into a real cheddar sauce, poured into a dish, topped with crumbs, and baked until the top browned and the edges bubbled and crisped against the sides. You broke through that toasted crust into a creamy, sharp, golden interior. For families across the country, a Hojo's frozen mac and cheese was a dinner you could pull from the freezer on a busy night and trust completely because it tasted exactly like the restaurant. That frozen line, mac and cheese, fried clams, croquettes, and more, put the Howard Johnson's name in millions of home kitchens. When the company stopped producing it, an entire generation lost the baked mac and cheese they grew up on. The boxed stuff that replaced it is faster and cheaper and a shadow of the real thing. Second pattern break. Here is the secret that almost nobody knows. In 1961, as American tastes were growing more sophisticated, Howard Johnson did something no other roadside chain would have dared. He went to Le Pavillon, the single finest French restaurant in New York City, and he hired its chef, Pierre Franet, to run his menu. Franet brought along a young, unhappy line cook from the same kitchen, a man named Jacques Pepin, by offering him something fine dining never did: regular hours and steady pay. So for a stretch in the early 60s, the recipes coming out of those orange-roofed kitchens were being shaped by two men who would go on to become legends of American cooking. One, a New York Times food columnist, the other, a television icon who cooked for presidents. Think about that. The clam chowder you slurped at a highway rest stop in 1962 may have been engineered by Jacques Pepin himself, scaled to 3,000 gallons a batch, and made to taste perfect every single time. That is the level of care that vanished. We did not just lose recipes, we lost a standard. Number 14, Boston baked beans in the bean pot. This was Howard Johnson's wearing its New England heart on its sleeve. The beans came not in a bowl, but in a little glazed ceramic bean pot. The real thing, with a piece of salt pork resting right on top. Inside were navy beans, slow-baked for hours with molasses and brown sugar and mustard until they turned mahogany dark and the sauce went thick and sweet and smoky. The salt pork rendered down through the whole pot, giving everything a deep, cured richness no shortcut can fake. Frequently, they arrived as part of a Frankfurt dinner, hot dogs and beans together, the way Boston had eaten on Saturday nights for 2 centuries. There was something about being served beans in their own little pot that made a cheap dinner feel like an occasion. Canned beans took over because they were instant, and we forgot what slow-baked beans actually taste like. The bean pot, the pork on top, the hours of waiting, all gone. That was tradition you could eat. Number 13, the charcoal broiled half-spring chicken. This was the dinner that made grown men loyal. A young, tender spring chicken was split in half and cooked over actual charcoal until the skin blistered and crackled and took on that smoky char you cannot fake on a flat top. The meat underneath stayed juicy, basted in its own fat as it cooked. It arrived as a proper plate, half a chicken with potato and vegetable, the kind of honest, well-made meal that anchored the dinner menu for decades. There were all-you-can-eat chicken nights at some locations, and people planned their week around them. The smell of charcoal and chicken drifting through the dining room was an advertisement all by itself. Real charcoal broiling is slow and messy and expensive, so the industry replaced it with gas and griddles and called it close enough. It was not close enough. Anyone who tasted a properly charcoal-broiled half chicken in 1965 will tell you that what we eat now is a faint copy of what we threw away. Number 12, fried haddock. The clams get all the glory, but the fried fish at Howard Johnson's deserved its own headline. Fresh haddock or flounder fillets were dipped in batter and fried in clean fat until the crust turned deep gold and crackling, while the fish inside flaked apart, white and steaming. It came with a wedge of lemon, a scoop of tartar sauce, and that signature pile of coleslaw. For Catholic families who did not eat meat on Fridays, this was the Friday dinner, and the restaurant filled up with them every week. The fish was mild and sweet, and the batter was always crisp, never greasy, because the kitchen managed its fryer oil with the same obsessive discipline it brought to everything else. People still ask the very last surviving locations to make fried haddock the way it used to be. Frozen, breaded, mass-produced fish replaced it almost everywhere. And the difference between that and a fresh fried Hojo's fillet is the difference between a photograph and the real ocean. Number 11, the coleslaw. Do not skip past the slaw, because at Howard Johnson's, the coleslaw was not an afterthought, it was part of the signature. It rode alongside the fried clams and the fish on nearly every seafood plate, and it was made the New England way, crisp, shredded cabbage in a dressing that balanced sweet and tangy and just rich enough to coat every strand. Cold, fresh, and bright, it cut straight through the richness of the fried food, cleansing your palate between bites of clam so the next bite tasted just as good as the first. People who worked the line will tell you the slaw was made fresh and measured carefully, never soupy, never bland. It is a small thing, a side dish, the kind of thing nobody writes home about. But the people who grew up on those clam plates remember the slaw because it was the quiet partner that made the whole plate work. The mass-produced tubs of slaw we buy today would not have made it past Howard Johnson's back door. Number 10, the clam roll. Before the fried clam was a basket, it was a sandwich, and the Howard Johnson's clam roll is a piece of New England that almost nobody outside the region remembers. Tender sweet fried clams were piled high into a split-top New England roll, the kind that is flat on the sides so it can be buttered and grilled golden, the same roll they used for the frankfurts and the lobster rolls up the coast. Buttered, toasted, and stuffed with hot, crisp clams, it was a complete handheld meal, a little messy, dripping, and perfect. You could eat it in the car heading to the beach. The split-top grilled roll is itself a regional treasure that most of the country has never even seen, and pairing it with Hojo's famous clams made something close to a sandwich legend. When the orange roofs closed, the clam roll mostly retreated back to a handful of New England seafood shacks. For everyone else, it might as well never have existed. Number 9, the kids' menu. This was Howard Johnson's masterstroke, the thing that turned children into lifelong customers, and the menu items had names pulled straight from nursery rhymes. There was the Simple Simon Special, roast beef with gravy and mashed potatoes, named after the Pie Man character on the company's own weather vane. There was the Miss Muffet lunch and the Jack Horner lunch, each one a kid-sized portion built for small appetites. Every children's meal came with a drink and, crucially, a choice of ice cream, sherbet, or gelatin for dessert, and almost no child on earth ever picked the gelatin. The menus themselves were toys, folding into paper hats or little cardboard models of the restaurant, sometimes printed with maps of the United States, and one was famously a guide to the metric system. Add the birthday club, where kids got a card good for a free meal and a cake, and you understand the strategy completely. They were not feeding children. They were making memories that those children would chase for the rest of their lives. Number 8, the root beer float. The fountain was where Howard Johnson's began, and the root beer float was the fountain at its purest. A tall glass, 2 or 3 scoops of that rich, butter-fat vanilla ice cream, and cold root beer poured slowly over the top so it foamed up into a tan, fizzing cloud that threatened to spill over the rim. You got a long spoon and a straw because you needed both. the spoon for the softening ice cream, and the straw for the root beer turned creamy and cold beneath the foam. It was the perfect ending to a clam dinner on a hot summer night, and at a quarter or so, it was a luxury any family could afford. The very last surviving Howard Johnson's locations said the root beer float was one of the most requested items right up to the end, customers chasing a taste of their own childhood. Real ice cream, real root beer, a tall glass, and time to sit and enjoy it. We are too busy for it now. Third pattern break. Here is what we actually lost when the orange roofs came down, and it is bigger than any single dish. At its peak in the 1960s and 70s, there were around 1,000 Howard Johnson's restaurants stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and that orange roof meant something. It meant a family on a road trip had a safe harbor every 50 miles. It meant a tired father could pull over and know, without a doubt, that his kids would get a hot, clean, affordable meal and 28 flavors of ice cream to argue over. It was the original home away from home. Number 7, the chicken pot pie. This was on the menu almost from the beginning, and it was everything a pot pie should be, and almost never is anymore. Tender chunks of chicken, peas, carrots, and a few cubes of potato swam in a thick, golden, savory gravy, all of it sealed beneath a flaky pastry crust that puffed and browned in the oven. You broke through the top with your fork, and the steam rolled out carrying the smell of Sunday dinner, and the crust collapsed down into the gravy to soak it up. It was the definition of comfort, a complete hot meal in a single dish, and Howard Johnson's made it consistently enough to put it in their grocery freezer line, too. The frozen pot pies we buy today are mostly crust and salt and a thin slick of paste. A real Hojo's pot pie was generous, the gravy rich, the chicken plentiful. It is the kind of homely, perfect dish the modern menu decided it had no room for. Then the 80s came. The chain passed from owner to owner, the menus went stale, fast food got faster and cheaper, and one by one the fryers went cold and the roofs faded from orange to gray. The very last restaurant in Lake George, New York, closed its doors in 2022, ending a run of nearly a century. We did not just lose a restaurant, we lost the feeling that the whole country was looking out for you on the road. Number 6, the hot, open-faced turkey sandwich. Diners across America once lived on this dish, and Howard Johnson's served one of the best. Slices of roast turkey were laid over a single piece of bread, then the whole plate was buried under a ladle of hot gravy and crowned with a scoop of mashed potato that got its own gravy too. Often a spoonful of cranberry sauce sat on the side, turning a Tuesday into a little Thanksgiving. You ate it with a fork and knife, and the bread underneath went soft and rich, soaking up everything. It was warm and heavy and deeply satisfying, the meal you ordered when you were tired and cold and wanted to feel taken care of. The open-faced hot sandwich, turkey or roast beef smothered in gravy, used to be the backbone of American casual dining. It has quietly disappeared from almost every menu, edged out by wraps and bowls. A whole comfort food tradition slid off the table, and most people never noticed it leave. Number 5, the 28 flavors. This was not a menu item. It was an institution, a national obsession, the single thing every American remembers about Howard Johnson's. 28 flavors of rich butterfat ice cream displayed in the case, and the count itself became a legend. There were the standards like chocolate and strawberry, and then the flavors that have nearly vanished from the earth, like burgundy cherry, maple walnut, macaroon, butter crunch, peppermint stick, and frozen pudding. The marketing was pure genius. If a child could prove he had tried all 28 flavors, the 29th cone was free, and you have never seen determination like a kid working his way through that list, one cone at a time, all summer long. The ice cream was made with real cream and real ingredients, and Hojo stopped producing it before the year 2000, so even the last restaurants had to buy their scoops from someone else. 28 flavors, made the right way, all under one orange roof. No freezer aisle has ever truly replaced it. Number 4, frozen pudding ice cream. Of all 28 flavors, this is the one that proves how much we have forgotten, because almost no one alive under 60 has any idea what it even was. Frozen pudding was a rich, custard-based ice cream loaded with rum-soaked dried fruit, candied bits, and warm spice, basically a fruitcake or a Christmas pudding spun into frozen form. It tasted like the holidays in a cone, complex and grown-up, nothing like the candy-flavored ice creams that dominate today. Alongside it sat other flavors that have simply ceased to exist on the American market, like grape nut, a strange and wonderful malty flavor with a chewy texture that people who tasted it still crave decades later. These were not flavors invented to chase children. They were sophisticated, old-fashioned, and confident. When the Howard Johnson's ice cream line ended, flavors like frozen pudding and grape nut did not move to another brand. They just went dark, taking a whole vocabulary of American dessert into the grave with them. Number 3, the New England clam chowder. Here is the dish a future legend perfected. When Pierre Franet and Jacques Pepin were shaping the Howard Johnson's kitchen in the early 60s, one of their great challenges was the clam chowder, because Pepin himself later wrote about the strange task of making 3,000 gallons of it at a time and having every gallon taste right. And it did. The chowder was thick and creamy, white and rich, loaded with tender clams and soft potato, seasoned with care and finished with butter. A real New England chowder served piping hot with oyster crackers on the side. For families pulling off a cold highway, a bowl of that chowder was salvation, warming you from the chest outward. The genius was the consistency. A man who would one day cook on national television and for heads of state had engineered a chowder so reliable that a roadside rest stop in Ohio tasted like the Massachusetts coast. We replaced it with canned, condensed soup that tastes of flour and salt. The recipe that a master built was simply allowed to vanish. Number 2, the frankfurt. Howard Johnson's did not sell hot dogs. They sold frankfurts, and the spelling tells you they thought of them as something better, because they were. This was the hot dog elevated into a small New England masterpiece. The frankfurter was grilled in butter until the skin blistered and split, then nestled into a split-top New England roll that had itself been buttered on both flat sides and grilled until golden and crisp. Butter on the meat, butter on the bun, grilled twice, and frequently served with a scoop of potato salad or that fresh coleslaw on the side. The result was a hot dog that crunched and snapped and dripped with buttery richness, a world away from the steamed, soggy thing most chains hand you today. People who grew up on Hojo's frankfurts have spent their whole adult lives trying and failing to find one that measures up. The buttered split-top roll alone is a regional treasure most of America has never tasted. The frankfurt took it to its highest form, and then it disappeared. Number 1, the tender sweet fried clam. This is the one. This is the dish that built the empire and the one people still dream about. Howard Johnson made fried clams famous across America, and he did it with an obsession most restaurants would never bother with. He struck an exclusive deal with the Safran Brothers Clam Company in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and together they did the thing that changed everything. They removed the dark belly from the clam, leaving only the sweet, tender strip. That is why they were called tendersweet. No grit, no bitterness, just clean, sweet clam meat dipped in batter and fried fast in clean fat until the outside turned crisp and golden and the inside stayed juicy and tender. Served in a basket or rolled into that buttered split-top bun with coleslaw and tartar on the side, the Hojo's fried clam was the gold standard, the dish that taught the whole country what a fried clam could be. The orange roofs are gone and the company is gone, but ask anyone who was there and the fried clams are the first thing they will remember, the taste of an entire era that drove off down the highway and never came back. Here is my challenge. If you are anywhere near the New England coast, go find a seafood shack still frying clams the old way, order them on a buttered split-top roll, and tell me it does not bring something back. Or make the Indian pudding at home, warm with vanilla ice cream melting on top, the way they served it for 50 years. Then come down to the comments and tell me which one you remember. I want to know if the fried clams get more love than the frankfurts, and I want to hear from anyone who can still name their favorite of the 28 flavors. Because these were not just menu items. They were the orange roof on the hill that meant you were almost home.